So with that, let's kind of go on. Let's kind of break this down, and we're going to break this into segments so you guys can watch the different pieces of the recording. So I want to start out with the first segment of this, which is what this is all about, which is simple, comprehensive trading based on the S&P 500. And how did we get here? So what I want to do here is start out with the tutorial of why telechart. You know, why did we choose telechart software over any others? I know why you chose it, but
it chose me.
It chose you. But from our perspective, it was the simple part of it. If I tell people all the time, if I can use this software, I'm pretty much going to agree that
I'll confirm that.
You'll get thanks. So for me, why telechart was it does exactly what it says it does. It's simple, mouse clicks. You know, it makes life a lot easier for me. Even when Chris updates it,
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's still a learning curve, but it's still easy to use. So what I want to do is have you kind of show how you can change the layout. They're not stuck with the layout here that's on the screen when they build their layouts, but kind of go through, you know, some of the simplicity of, you know, how did we get all 10 lines on the chart? How did we get the watch list built? You know, just a couple of little tutorial things that people can use.
Well, I think it's really important for people to realize this is an unusual look for a chart. It doesn't look like an individual chart with individual candles or bars. These line graphs have been added for the purpose of making direct comparison between these 10 sectors. So there's a very unique reason we created this particular workspace and why it looks like it does. This watch list holds the same information basically as these 10 lines. These 10 lines reflect the ETFs here in the watch list. We added a small chart here, so as you're flipping through, you can see the individual price chart of these individual ETFs. And then down here we added, on this left side, a relative strength graph, which just basically compares how a sector, whichever sector we have selected in our watch list, compares to the S&P 500 over the last year. Simple math of it is, if the line's moving down, it's underperforming. If the line's moving up, it's outperforming. It's pretty easy to read.
See, simple. I love that.
Yeah. So the thing I think it's important for people to understand is this is set up this way to look this way because the bottom line is that's what it's designed to do. But they don't have to look this way. This whole thing is called a workspace. And its name reflects what it does. It's a space that you've created to do certain work. And in this case, it's your sector analysis. I'm going to flip through a couple of other your workspaces just to illustrate that workspaces can look very different than that. Here's one that looks a little more like what they'd be used to looking at, an individual chart with a bar chart on it, a few indicators, and a couple of watch lists on the left side. Very simple, very easy, and that is kind of a traditional way to look at it. You can also use, multiple watch lists, around charts. All of these are workspaces. Every single one of them is a workspace, but they're workspace created for a different reason. And this collection of workspaces that you have, and you can see the tabs along the bottom there, that's called a desktop. And that just gathers these things up together. So let's go back to our sector rotation. And here's how we got the 10 lines. We simply go up to this is called the legend, and that, by the way, has the color-coded legend for these lines so they can see which line represents which ETF. When you click on price history, one of the options that you have is called comparisons. So when you click on that, here's where we set up all the 10 lines, and we said we wanted to start from the same point. That's why all the lines start from right over here. And that's an apples-to-apples comparison of the performance of those lines since that whatever is your first date on the chart. So with that comparison, you can set up as many or as few. It's a great way to set up comparisons between individual stocks, between ETFs or sectors like this. You could have different indexes plotted with your stocks, lots of different uses for that. But that's how we set that up. Price history, clicking that same spot and going to edit, would also be where you choose if you want to have a line graph, if you want to have bars or candles, if you want to color those in certain ways to reflect the movement of the stock. So that everything that about the look of this chart really starts in that little legend. And in this case, that's where we set up those 10 ETF lines. These same ETFs are over here in our watch list, and all we did here was to you can click on the watch list drop down, and you'll see that there's an option to create a new personal watch list. And we named that something like sectors. Oh, this is not easy when I can't get to it. When you give it a name like sectors, then you get a blank watch list, and you just start adding symbols. You start adding symbols by clicking on the symbol and then just typing things in. And of course, we did things like XLV and XLU. And you can see it's very simple to build that watch list and put in any symbols you want. This can be done with anything. We happen to be doing it with our sectors. So that's just a couple of quick points on how you can set up workspaces and some of the ways we did this. So anyhow, that's kind of why we built it and how we built it.
Okay. And I think it's important that people find software they're comfortable with, and that you find things that are going to make trading easier. Trading is stressful enough without adding, complexity to it relative to the software that you're using. Find things that fit your personality and your traits.
Well, one other reason I think that has been simple for you is that we've already done the work of creating the watch lists that go with these. So you can click on your watch list drop down, just type part of the word select, and it'll bring to the top of the list these select spider ETFs. These are actually the component lists. So these are the individual stocks that make up those ETFs. So it's very easy to quickly pop over and find the stocks when you want to dig down in.
Exactly. And we're going to come back to that because I want to talk about how we use that a lot. I mean, and it's we have found some ways that I like will show, but obviously everybody's got to find a way that works for them. When we talk about the sector rotation and how Telechart works in this, the premise for me is visual. And this is interesting. These are not sexist comments in any way, but men tend to be visual by nature.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but and you teach a lot more of the Telechart classes than I do. But when you walk in and there's 200 people and there's 190 men and 10 women, you kind of look at it and go, well, these guys are visual. They need something that they can see.
Right.
Women tend to be more factual and tend to use more of a cognitive reasoning when they look at charts than men do. And I think that people need to figure that out about themselves. But the reason we created the visual is not just that it's human nature, but also you've heard me speak. I like the market to come to life. I mean, nothing could be more boring to me than to not know why that line's not moving. Why is that line moving in that direction?
Yeah.
It's the engineering side of me that wants to know why the bridge went that direction instead of another one.
Yeah.
But it also makes you a more confident trader the more the market comes alive, and that's what this table does. So I want to break this down into really three key components, and keeping with the theme of keep it simple, which is the simplicity of this is, look at it this way, that at the top of this pecking order is the S&P 500. That's the broad index. That's 500 stocks. That incorporates 10 major sectors underneath it. Those 10 major sectors are now currently about 87 subsectors that we can break down depending on who you're going to look at. Yeah. But the S&P breaks it down into roughly 87 subsectors they can break that down into, which gives you the sub-industry groups, and then you've got the 500 stocks underneath that. Yeah. And so to me, we very rarely will break them so far down that we've only got 3 stocks in a sub-industry group. But the key is to understand, this is a filter process. This is drilling down into the process to look for the stock, if that's what we want to own, or own the sectors you were talking about. If everything's correlating, why not just own the sector?
Exactly.
And if everything's correlating even more so to the S&P, why not just own SPY, which just own it all? You dampen risk by doing that, and that really, I think, is a key point. So when we go back to the simple theme, the 3 things that we're going to talk about, I'm going to break this down into 3 time segment videos that they can go through. But the first one is simple research. Keep your research simple so that you can chart it, see it, believe it, and trade it.
Right.
And then secondly, I want to break it down into simple money management, which is how do you get into a trade, get out of a trade, and how do you manage it in between. And then the last part of this is, do it simply on purpose. And that's your purpose. It's what you want to do with their money. You and I talk about stocks frequently. We talk about different things in the market. But what it's really going to come down to, what you and I are going to trade, is what we're comfortable trading.
Yeah.
No matter what anybody believes. That's really what it comes down to. You can go to the best classes. You can sit at the feet of the best people. You've been doing public speaking almost your whole life, just like I have, and I've sat in front of a lot of great teachers. But when I stood in front of people, it's still got to be me.
Yeah.
Trading's the same way. It really is. And so we're going to break it down to that. And then the last piece of this is just some simple tools that we can use with IntelliChart for filtering, scanning. I'm going to use both those words because I never use them right.
Well, that's another reason why I think you've chosen IntelliChart is there really isn't anything in the industry that can match the scanning capabilities of TC2000. Being able to take a large, kind of an unmanageable mass of stocks and zip through that in a matter of minutes and find stocks that look, act, and function the way you're wanting them to, that's the scanning capabilities of TC, and that's what we do when we start drilling into these.
Okay, all right, let's go to the first part of this, which is simple research. And to me, I've been teaching this now for going on 16 years, scan, watch, play. And I've been teaching this even before I started using IntelliChart, just because to me it's about you want to scan the market, you want to build a watch list of what you scanned, and then you want to be able to trade it.
Yeah.
And I know we talk to people all the time, that people that will spend hours scanning and then never trade because for whatever reason they just the fun is in the scanning, it's not in the trading. And to me, this is too much like work, so I want to trade so that I can actually make money at it. And so what I've done is I'm going to go through this of how we scan the market very quickly, in that you can watch other videos that we have out there. But the key to me right now with scanning this is that we're only scanning the S&P 500. So the key point of this is I'm going to go back over here to this big chart that we have, and I want to put in here the S&P 500 index. And what I'm going to look at is a longer time frame, and I want to know what the market is doing. And if the market is in a current short-term uptrend, it's also in a long-term uptrend, and we can draw trend lines all over the place. But the point being is that the market's in an uptrend, then if it is, something should be leading it. In other words, we should be able to know what's leading the market, and that's why one of my favorite tools now of all times is the custom date sort tool. In that if I want to go back to this point right here and drag this across, I've got that the S&P 500 is up from October of 2011 to now. They're almost 32%, which is phenomenal unto itself. But all I have to do is it's going to attach it to that table right there. It tells me that it's going to attach it. This is kind of strange that I'm actually teaching how to use TC2000.
You're doing good.
I click OK, and it's now going to tell me which sectors have done the best, and the leadership of that has been financials. And that's how quick, like you were just saying, it does give you such quick tools to use. But for me, that's what I want to know. I want to know out of the S&P 500 index what's leading it, and I can see it very clearly right there what was leading the market over that long period of time. And that, to me, as an investor, gives me confidence all along the way. And that if I were to look at the chart of XLF today, I can see that that trend is still in an uptrend. We've hit a new high. We've pulled back. We tested support. We've bounced off of it. If I want to trade on the move above $15.95, $16 a share right there on the horizontal line, I can now have confidence. I'm in an uptrend. I see the trend. I see some of the components. If I want to look at fundamentals, I can go back and look at what are the fundamentals of financials. Are they overpriced? What's the average PE? Only because I know this, I'll throw it in here. In that, the average PE ratio right now on financials is running around 13.5 times earnings, which is pretty fair value. It's not overpriced, not overbought, but pretty fair value, meaning that there's still room on the upside for that sector to get overbought. That means if I get a technical breakout, I understand the fundamentals are there, I now have the confidence to buy. And that's what this all is going to bring together, is all these scans start to make sense to me, and I gain confidence as a trader.
Right.
I gain confidence as an investor that I'm in the right sector. It may pull back, which we all buy things, and it seems like the day we buy them, they pull back.
Yep.
Murphy's Law. But if I have confidence in what I own, I'm willing to accept the pullback. I may even add to the position because that confidence exists there. And that's what I think is very, very important to each part of this. The second piece of this is the watch list component of this, in that we've already built the watch list here. So the importance of it is that, well, financials. All right, what if I want to know what the sub-industry groups are of financials? Well, that's going to be a challenge to some people, but there's, to me, the easiest thing is to go to standardandpoors.com, since we're talking about the S&P 500. If you just log into their website, you can actually pull up how they break down their sub-industry groups.
Right.
And it will tell you financials, and it'll tell you that they have banks, and they have regional banks, and they have insurance, and they have broker-dealers. So you can see all four components of those. And because we know them, and for the sake of time of not having to go and figure all that out, if I wanted to look at these, I can put KBE in, and I can see, all right, it looks a lot like the other chart. But here's something new and exciting that I've learned. I can just click on here, create new personal watch list, and I can build my own.
Right.
So I can build the financials, and I can go in here in financials. I only have to look them up once. So I build my own financials, and with my sub-industry groups, I call it financials. I can put XLF in it, KBE, KIE, IAI, the different components. Now I've got my own watch list built. Anytime I want to look at financials, I don't have to go back to Standard & Poor's anymore. I've got it with IntelliChart.
Well, and in the simplicity issue you're talking about, what you're building there is a watch list of financial ETFs, correct?
Correct.
So you're still in this broader, sector type base with an ETF. So you got tradable vehicles that mitigate some of that risk. You're still looking at the multiple parts of the financial sector, but you're doing it through ETFs, which I think is a really interesting way. If people want to drill down into those and find the stocks, they can. But you've stepped down another layer into the subsectors, into the broken down part of financials, but you're still doing it with ETFs.
Well, and I think that's key, because when you get into, like we were looking at over here, that if we want to go in and change this watch list, if I go to personal there and I pull up my personal watch list and I want to go down and say, all right, do I have a financials already built? And if I do, I click on it, and now I've got it already. It speeds up the process of building and having your watch list pre-built. And then now I may find an ETF in there that I forgot about.
Yeah.
So what I spend maybe 45 minutes, an hour now building a complex watch list of all the financial ETFs, that maybe be 60 or 70 of them out there. Now I've got another watch list I can go to, filter, sort, scan, and it all comes off of this scatter graph that we're talking about. Yeah. But we're starting from a point, and then we're coming out, and that's where I want to go to now, is go back to this graph, because this is what is important to me, is that now we're going to look at this. So we talk about scanning the S&P 500. Now we're scanning it a little bit differently, and you can move this. I learned this. You can grab this and move this by date anywhere you want. Or you can use this little wheel on your mouse.
Scroll wheel on your mouse.
See the scroll wheel?